What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So the topic of today's video is walking, and specifically walking to improve fitness. So we all know that walking is very beneficial for health, right? And it's also good for recovery. I feel it's really restorative, so it's obviously good for circulation, it can help restore your breathing mechanics. It's, I think, very good to and very restorative for your joints, for your spine. But that's kind of stuff we already know, right? Like walking is good for you. And today I want to explore the question whether walking is actually beneficial for fitness, right? Or not. And there are different opinions on this. So some people will say, yes, walking is actually beneficial. It can improve your VO2 max, it can improve your running performance, and others basically say walking is close to useless. And the reason I got interested in this is because I'm on a more or less professional kettlebell sport training program. So I already have a lot of volume, a lot of impact, and obviously I need to maintain and build my aerobic base for that. And I always used to do that with running, and I'm little by little increasing my running volume. And last year I just kind of got to the point where I couldn't, it's hard at this point to run more and still do the kettlebell sport volume I'm doing. So the question is, what else can I do? Now the obvious answer would be cycling, which would be a very good answer, but I just logistically don't have a bike, and my gym doesn't have one. I don't want to get a membership at another gym just for that. So that leaves me with walking basically. So walking, I feel, is very interesting because if you study the history of endurance training, there was specifically Paavo Nurmi, a Finnish runner who in the first half of the 20th century broke all the records, and across multiple distances like marathon, 10K, I think the mile. So he was basically unbeatable. They called him the Flying Finn. And a huge part of his training was walking. So he actually, in Finland, did in the base period up to 6-hour-long walks. And there's a quote by him where he said, maybe you could, in a paraphrase, maybe you could get the same results without walking, but whether you would enjoy the training as much is another matter. So that's I feel a really a beautiful quote actually. But nowadays, of course, with top endurance athletes, with top runners, walking has fallen largely out of failure because people realized you could just do slow runs, right? You could just jog and do base runs, and also you could use a bike for cross training. So is walking useless? And some people claim that you can build even a high level VO2 max with just walking. I've seen people make claims to that effect, and I actually have to really disagree with that. So usually they cite studies on hunter-gatherers who walk all day, indigenous tribes who live somewhere in their basically in the Stone Age. And those often do have very high VO2 maxes. But the thing is, first off, we modern humans, even as professional athletes, and not even talking about lay people, we usually don't even get that activity level. So if you're on your feet all day and working all day and hunting all day, okay, that's a different matter. You can't replace it with just 2 or 3 hours of walking, I guess. And the other thing is those people are really small. So they're usually very short and very light in stature and very light in terms of body weight. And that means, since VO2 max is a relative metric, obviously they're going to have a high VO2 max, but I don't think you can just scale that to the modern Western man who weighs at least 70-80 kilograms. And Another question is like your fitness level, and there's like a very, very recognized Australian endurance expert and top coach, Alan Cousins, who is a big fan of walking, and he's part of the reason I started picking it up. And he says if your VO2 max is under 50, walking is going to significantly contribute to raising your VO2 max. And if your VO2 max is higher than 50, it's still good, but it's not going to like significantly build it even more. And I think that makes sense. And the thing is, my VO2 max is higher than 50, not much, but it is higher than that. So I still choose to run an experiment, or to walk an experiment. Bad pun. Already getting up there in age, so I'm starting with the dad jokes already. So is walking actually going to help me improve my fitness? And I started this experiment in January, and it is an ongoing experiment. So I'm not talking about the like 10,000 steps a day, because I'm a relatively active person. And at the moment, I just checked my watch before I started recording this video. At the moment, I'm averaging 15,000 steps a day. You're not going to get super fit from 10 to 20,000 steps a day. That's like not because it's a difference whether you're walking intentionally over a long duration compared to just like moving throughout the day. And I kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I'm running this experiment, and what I started doing is incorporating long walks. So the minimum I'm going to walk is 1 hour, but I try to do 2 or 3 hours, and I'm probably going to push that even more. I'm walking continuously, and I'm walking at a brisk pace. So I'm like, not like, I'm just like really trying. My heart rate doesn't get up really, but I'm trying to like the only people that pass me when I'm doing my training walks are people who are like seriously in a hurry. And I'm actually curious to see what's that going to do. Like, there are some hypotheses in terms of like physically what it's going to do. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do much in terms of cardiac remodeling. So what's that? When we train in like lower training zones, or even in higher zones, like the heart starts filling more because it has to pump more blood. So we get that kind of like stretching of the heart that over time is going to increase the stroke volume, the amount of blood the heart can pump with one beat. And that's going to increase our VO2 max. And since my heart rate doesn't really go up even into zone 1, I'm not going to get that effect. And that's basically, that lines up exactly with what Alan Cousins said, that you can't, like if your VO2 max is higher than 50, you're not going to get that effect. So that makes sense. So what else am I going to get from it? Well, there are some pathways certain pathways that are activated, that are going to lead to mitochondrial biogenesis, so the building of new mitochondria. And there are a bunch of different pathways that can like signal or trigger mitochondria growth. And some of them are activated with higher intensity training, some of them with low intensity training, but there is one specific pathway that gets activated even with walking. So that's one benefit I'm going to get. So there is going to be the benefit of more mitochondria. Then possibly there's going to be a benefit of capillarization, right? So like building those tiny blood vessels. But the really huge benefit you get from walking is fat oxidation, because endurance sport, when you're working at high intensities, even when you're working at medium intensities, is very reliant on carbohydrates, right? That's why in modern like endurance sports nutrition, we talk about constantly fueling the body with carbohydrates. Especially in my sport, in kettlebell sport, where the durations are so short, it's highly reliant on carbohydrates. So, but the problem is if you teach your body to use carbs as fuel all the time, and you also supply it with carbs all the time, you're going to slowly lose some of that ability to oxidize fat. And that's actually not what you want, because you want that metabolic flexibility to use either fat or carbs, depending on what's needed, because fat is a much more efficient fuel source. So if the intensity is low or you're at rest, you actually want to use fats. You don't want to burn carbs. You want to, first off, save the carbs for the high intensity efforts. And secondly, it's going to lead to problems down the line, right? If you can get like insulin resistant and all that like bad stuff can happen. So in terms of just balancing that out, I think it's going to do a good job. Now, in terms of fitness benefits, I can't yet say, because it's only now getting warmer, and I had a really specific kettlebell sport training phase for the like first 5 months of the year, and I'm only now starting to ramp up my aerobic training mileage. So I'm still keeping up the kettlebell sport training, but since the weather is getting slightly warmer, I'm now trying to build my aerobic base over the summer. So obviously that includes running, but because, like I said, I'm getting so much like impact during kettlebell sport training, that's also going to include a lot of walking. And this week I worked up to 5 hours a week. That's combined walking and running, and I'm going to build on that. And the question, like whether it's going to improve performance, like specifically aerobic capacity, is an interesting one, and I think it's going to be answered over the summer. And the question I'm kind of asking is, can I walk myself to a sub-20 minute 5K? So in December of last year, I ran a 5K under 21 minutes. Don't remember. It was like 20:55 or something. I don't remember. But well under 21 minutes. And that was basically done exclusively on kettlebell sport training and low intensity jogging. And I wasn't rested whatsoever, no taper. It was literally the day after a huge high volume kettlebell sport session, so on tired legs. And I was kind of happy with that, because I know like it would take literally like a month of specific training to get under 20 minutes or even faster. And now the question is, can I improve on that, but this time with the walking added in? And that's the question that's going to get answered over the coming months, I guess. And that's like really, I feel either way I'm not going to regret it, because the walking is just so beneficial for like health. It's actually, I have like a history of walking, because my parents, like when we grew up, they were into walking. We had dogs. We always used to walk the dogs for long periods of time. And my dad was also into hiking, so I walked a lot as a kid. And later, when I was in the military, I also like spent a lot of time walking. And I actually ran 8:23, 1.5 mile, just on like walking and general like military training, where you have like your 1 or 2 PT runs a week maybe. And obviously on top of that, I did a lot of strength training. And obviously I was a lot younger back then, so like now I'm turning 35, so I'm not sure that would work out the same way. But I still feel like there are fitness benefits to walking, even though like in terms of the cardiac remodeling, like we discussed, it's probably not going to move the needle too much, but yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. So this week I did a 3-hour walk on Wednesday, and yeah, that's basically the experiment I'm running, and we'll see what's going to happen with that. All right, guys, let me know your experience or what your thoughts are in the comment, and see you next time.